When running structural equation modeling, whether it's with observed variables, we're going to be doing now with path analysis or latent variables, the models are extremely complicated. So we try to find ways of communicating aspects of the model. And so often we'll come up with terms that are somewhat unique to structural equation modeling. For example, we talked about how to create path diagrams in a previous video and the symbols we use to communicate about our model. Well, they're also important to consider the type of variables in our model. And I'm not talking about qualitative, or categorical. I'm talking about what are referred to as exogenous versus endogenous variables. Now, the basic definition of an exogenous variable in your model is that the causes for the variable, whatever causes its values, are outside the model. We're not including variables in the model to explain its variability, in other words. And so the causes are outside the model. An endogenous variable is just the opposite. The causes are presumed to be inside the model. And so in this case, endogenous variables are dependent variables in a regression, essentially. The way I'd like to think about it is the X is like we're excluding the causes. Endogenous, we're including the causes in the model. So let's look at the aspiration achievement model and figure out which variables are endogenous and which are endogenous. So here's the path diagram for our aspiration achievement model. Now, instead of writing out the actual names of the variables, I've written them as x1, x2, y1, y2 for a particular reason. x1 is family income, x2 is ability, quantitative ability. Now you can see there's nothing predicting in either one of these. So that's one of the reasons, personally, I refer to them as x's, because they are exogenous variables. So the exogenous variables, the ones have no predictions to them. So in this case, it's x1, which is family income, and x2, which is quantitative ability. Next video, I'm going to be talking about the Ligereal model, by the way, in notation, and calling them x1, x2 is going to be helpful when we start specifying parameters for these direct paths. That's one of the reasons I have replaced them with x1 and x2. Now we can see in our red boxes, these are our outcome variables within our model, our dependent variables in a way, in some part of the model. And so they are endogenous models in that we have something predicting them. For example, for y1, which was aspiration, the causes are presumed to be influenced by x1 and x2, which is income and ability. y2 is achievement, and that's presumed to be influenced or caused by x1, x2, as well as y1. And you can see here an endogenous variable can act like a dependent variable or a predictor. So y1 is actually both in this model, and that's very common in structural equation models. And so this rule also applies when we start looking at latent variables in later videos.